Ms. Carter, we found 3 children sitting outside a locked community center at 6:30 this morning. And according to the note left with them, you were supposed to take responsibility. The police officer's voice was calm, but my fingers tightened so hard around the steering wheel that my knuckles burned white. At that exact moment, standing in the middle of a grocery store parking lot with my coffee shaking in the cup holder beside me, I realized something terrifying. My family had finally crossed the line between manipulation and something far more dangerous. And the worst part? They still believed I would clean up the mess for them like I always had before. If you've ever had family members who treated your kindness like an unlimited resource, if you've ever been guilted into sacrificing your peace because family helps family, then hit like, subscribe, and stay until the end because this story is one of the most satisfying boundary revenge stories you'll ever hear. What started as one woman saying no to unpaid babysitting turned into police reports, forged signatures, public humiliation, legal consequences, and a family finally being forced to face the reality they spent years dumping onto somebody else. My name is Camille Carter. I'm 33 years old, and for most of my life, my family treated me less like a daughter and more like an emergency service that never closed. I was the dependable one, the reliable one, the calm one, the one who answered the phone at midnight, the one who left work early when somebody needed help, the one who covered bills quietly so nobody else had to struggle publicly. I worked in emergency operations at a children's hospital, which meant my entire professional life revolved around solving crises. Somewhere along the way, my family decided that made me responsible for solving theirs too. The problem with being the dependable person in a dysfunctional family is that people slowly stop seeing your help as generosity. They begin seeing it as your purpose. At first, it starts small, picking up your niece from school once because your sister had an appointment, watching the kids for a weekend because your parents were tired, covering a grocery bill because somebody's paycheck came late. You tell yourself it's temporary because that's what love does. Love helps, love sacrifices, love shows up. But toxic families have a way of stretching temporary favors into permanent expectations until you wake up one day realizing nobody has asked what you want in years. My older sister Marissa had mastered that system perfectly. Growing up, she always knew how to turn herself into the center of gravity inside any room. If she cried, everybody rushed to comfort her. If she struggled, the family reorganized around her problems. Meanwhile, I learned early that being easy earned approval. I became independent because independence was the only way to avoid becoming another burden in a house already revolving around Marissa's emotions. By the time we reached adulthood, those roles had hardened into concrete. Marissa married Trevor Blake, a man with the confidence of somebody who had failed upward his entire life. Trevor had the kind of personality that looked charming from far away but exhausting up close. He loved attention, hated responsibility, and treated every inconvenience like a personal attack. Together, he and Marissa built a life held together almost entirely by other people's labor. My parents enabled them constantly because Marissa gave them something they valued more than fairness: grandchildren. Harper was 9 years old and already too observant for her own good. She had those quiet eyes children develop when they spend years monitoring adult moods for safety. Miles was 6, energetic and emotional, always one small frustration away from tears or laughter. Chloe was only 3 and still carried a stuffed rabbit everywhere she went like it was part of her body. I loved those kids deeply. That was what made everything harder. Because toxic people often hide behind innocent people. They know good-hearted individuals will tolerate mistreatment longer if children are involved. The night everything changed started with a cookout at my parents' house. The air smelled like charcoal and sweet barbecue sauce. Plastic cups sweated across folding tables while neighbors drifted through the backyard, pretending our family was normal. My mother moved around, greeting everyone dramatically, while my father sat near the grill, giving orders nobody asked for. Marissa wore a pale yellow sundress and spent most of the evening making sure attention stayed fixed on her. Looking back, now I realize she was building toward an announcement all night. At one point, she tapped her fork against her glass loudly enough to silence the yard. "Okay, everyone," she said with a grin stretching across her face. "We have news." My mother gasped immediately before hearing anything because she treated every sentence from Marissa like breaking royal news. Trevor wrapped an arm around his wife proudly while my father leaned back smiling like he already knew. Marissa rested both hands dramatically against her stomach. "Baby number 4 is coming." The backyard exploded with cheers. My mother actually clapped hard enough for her bracelets to rattle together while neighbors crowded around offering congratulations. Somebody shouted that children were blessings. Somebody else joked about needing a bigger dining table next Thanksgiving. Everywhere I looked, people smiled like another baby was automatically wonderful news. I sat there quietly holding my cup of sweet tea because, unlike everyone else, my brain immediately skipped past celebration and went straight to logistics. Another pregnancy meant more babysitting requests, more emergency pickups, more exhausted. Phone calls, more weekends sacrificed, more pressure, more expectation. Deep down, I already knew exactly what was coming next because every major decision my sister made somehow arrived attached to my unpaid labor. And right on schedule, my mother turned toward me with that soft, manipulative smile I had grown to hate. "Camille," she said sweetly, "you'll help with the kids while Marissa rests after the baby comes. Not can you, not would you. You will." The words landed on the table so casually that most people probably missed how ugly they actually were. My chest tightened instantly. I looked around, waiting for somebody to recognize how insane it was to volunteer another adult's life without permission. Nobody reacted. Trevor smirked into his drink while Marissa smiled like this had already been decided privately long before dinner. I slowly set my cup down. "Why me?" The silence hit the backyard immediately. My mother blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean, why is this automatically my responsibility?" Marissa's expression changed first. Her smile disappeared so fast it almost looked violent. Trevor shifted uncomfortably while my father stared at me with the same warning look he used throughout my childhood whenever I embarrassed him by acting like my own person. My mother laughed nervously. "Don't start drama tonight." That sentence alone told me everything. In my family, boundaries were considered drama. Exhaustion was acceptable. Sacrifice was expected. But saying no, that was betrayal. I felt heat spreading slowly beneath my skin. "I work 60-hour weeks. I barely sleep. I already help constantly." Trevor shrugged. "You're single. It's not like you have kids of your own." There it was, the thing nobody in my family said directly but everybody believed. Because I wasn't married with children, my time mattered less. My exhaustion counted less. My life was somehow incomplete, compared to Marissa's, which meant parts of it could be redistributed whenever necessary. Marissa leaned back in her chair, rubbing her stomach lazily. "Honestly, it'll be good training for you." Training. The word slammed into me harder than yelling would have. She said it so casually, too, like my existence was simply preparation for serving lives more important than mine. Around us, people shifted awkwardly, but nobody corrected her. Nobody defended me. That silence hurt more than the insult itself because it confirmed what I had started realizing years earlier. My family did not see me as an equal adult. They saw me as support staff. I looked toward my father one last time, hoping maybe this once he would step in. But he just stared back coldly, his expression saying the same thing it always said. "Don't make this difficult. Don't embarrass us. Obey quietly." And suddenly, something inside me snapped loose. Not loudly, not dramatically, just cleanly, like a rope finally breaking after years under tension. I stood up calmly, grabbed the pasta dish I brought, picked up my purse, and started walking toward the gate. Behind me, my mother called my name sharply while Marissa muttered something angry under her breath. Trevor laughed awkwardly, trying to turn the moment into a joke for the neighbors. But I kept walking because for the first time in my life, I understood something clearly. If I stayed there another minute, they would convince me to apologize for defending my own life. I reached my car with my heartbeat hammering violently against my ribs. My hands shook as I started the engine, but underneath the anxiety there was another feeling too. Relief. Terrifying, unfamiliar relief. Because I had finally done something my family never expected from me. I said no. And none of us understood. Yet how much that single word was about to cost everybody. The next morning started with 23 missed calls, 4 voice messages, and a headache already forming behind my eyes before I had even gotten out of bed. Sunlight pushed weakly through the blinds of my apartment while my phone buzzed nonstop. Across the nightstand like something alive and angry. I stared at the screen for a long moment without touching it because I already knew exactly what those messages contained. Guilt, pressure, manipulation. My family always moved fast whenever somebody challenged the system. The second one person stopped cooperating, everybody else rushed in to force balance back into place. I ignored the calls at first and tried pretending I could still have a normal morning. I fed my cat, started the coffee maker, and stood barefoot. In my kitchen, watching steam rise from the mug while my thoughts replayed the cookout over and over again. Marissa's voice, Trevor's smirk, my father's disappointed stare. The word training echoing in my head like a slap that arrived late. The more I thought about it, the more I realized something painful. None of them had actually cared whether I was tired. They didn't care whether I wanted children or whether I had plans or dreams or limits. In their minds, my usefulness mattered more than my happiness. My phone rang again while I stood at the counter, but this time the number was unfamiliar. Something about that instantly made my stomach tighten. Unknown numbers rarely brought good news at 8 in the morning. I answered cautiously, pressing the phone against my ear while the coffee cooled untouched beside me. Hello? The voice on the other end was calm and professional. Good morning, Ms. Carter. This is Officer Briggs with the Lakeview Police Department. Every muscle in my body locked instantly. Police officers do not call ordinary people before breakfast unless something has gone very wrong. There are 3 children at the Lakeview Community Center, he continued carefully, and a note was left stating you are responsible for them. For a second, the entire world around me seemed to go quiet. I could still hear the refrigerator humming softly behind me, but my brain stopped processing language properly after the word responsible. I genuinely thought maybe I misunderstood him. I'm sorry, I whispered slowly. What children? Officer Briggs paused. Your nieces and nephew, ma'am. They were dropped off before opening hours. Staff discovered them outside when they arrived this morning. The mug slipped slightly in my hand, hot coffee splashing over my fingers, but I barely felt it. My heart started pounding so hard it physically hurt. I never agreed to watch them, I said immediately. I never even knew they were there. The officer's tone shifted almost invisibly after that sentence. Less casual, more alert. I understand, ma'am. But since your name was left as the responsible party, we needed to contact you before moving further. That was the moment something icy settled deep in my chest. They had actually done it. My family had used my name, without permission, and abandoned those children somewhere expecting me to automatically clean up the situation before authorities became involved. The drive to the community center took 14 minutes. But emotionally, it felt like crossing into a completely different version of my life. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly while every thought inside my head crashed into the next. 1. What if the children had gotten hurt? What if nobody found them quickly? What if something worse had happened? Anger kept fighting with panic so violently that my chest felt tight the entire drive there. By the time I pulled into the parking lot, 2 police cars sat near the entrance, flashing silently beneath the gray morning sky. 3 tiny backpacks rested beside a bench outside the building like forgotten luggage. That image hurt more than anything else. Harper sat upright with her arms crossed tightly over herself, trying hard to look calm even though fear sat plainly across her face. Miles wiped tears against the sleeve of his hoodie while Chloe slept curled against a tired-looking employee who looked like she had already dealt with too many irresponsible adults this morning. The second Harper saw my car, relief flooded across her expression so quickly that guilt stabbed straight through me even though none of this was my fault. Those kids trusted me completely. They believed I would always show up because I always had before. Officer Briggs approached quietly after I stepped out of the car. He looked exhausted in the way only public service workers can look exhausted. "Ms. Carter?" he asked. I nodded once. Without another word, he handed me the note left behind with the children. The handwriting was unmistakably Marissa's. Rounded letters, little loops on the ends of words. Casual cruelty disguised as sweetness. The note read, "Camille agreed to watch the kids today. Family helps family. We'll pick them up later. Family helps family." The rage that sentence created inside me was so sharp it almost felt clean. Because people like my family loved using words like family whenever they wanted obedience. Love meant sacrifice when they needed something. Loyalty meant silence when they behaved badly. Family became less about connection and more about control. Officer Briggs watched my face carefully. "Did you agree to supervise these children today?" he asked calmly. Instead of answering immediately, I unlocked my phone and opened the messages from the night before. My mother volunteering me without permission. Marissa mocking me about training. My clear response saying this was not my responsibility. I handed Bao him the screen silently. He read every message carefully. Then his posture changed. Until that moment, he had treated the situation like messy family confusion. After reading those texts, he started treating it like documentation. "So there was no verbal agreement either?" he asked. "None," I answered immediately. I explicitly refused. He nodded slowly while looking back at the note again, and I could practically see the shift happening in his mind. This was no longer a misunderstanding between relatives. This was somebody using another adult's identity to dump responsibility onto them without consent. I walked toward the kids slowly after that. Harper stood immediately the second I reached them. "Are we in trouble?" she asked quietly. God, that question broke something inside me. Because children always assume chaos is somehow their fault. I crouched down in front of her and brushed hair gently away from her face. "No, sweetheart," I said softly. "None of this is your fault." Miles sniffled loudly beside us while Chloe rubbed sleep from her eyes holding that stuffed rabbit against her chest. For a brief moment, I wanted to scream. Not at the children, at the adults who kept putting them into situations like this. At Marissa for treating motherhood like a performance while expecting everyone else to handle the labor behind it. At Trevor for acting like fatherhood ended after conception. At my parents for enabling this entire disaster because grandchildren mattered more to them than accountability ever did. Then the front doors burst open. Marissa stormed inside first wearing oversized sunglasses and dramatic panic across her face like she was arriving at the scene of a tragedy instead of causing one. Trevor followed behind her with the same arrogant swagger he carried everywhere, coffee cup still in hand like this entire situation was merely inconvenient. The second he saw me standing beside Officer Briggs, his expression darkened instantly. "There she is," he snapped loudly. "The aunt who calls cops on children." I didn't even look at him. Instead, I turned calmly toward Officer Briggs and said, "Please include that statement in your report." That sentence visibly threw Trevor off balance because men like him survive on emotional reactions. He wanted yelling, crying, defensiveness. Calm documentation frightened people like Trevor because calm people were harder to manipulate. Marissa rushed toward the children, dramatically rubbing her stomach. "This stress isn't good for the baby," she kept repeating loudly enough for everybody nearby to hear. Not once did she ask whether the children were scared. Not once did she apologize for leaving them outside before opening hours. The performance had already begun. In Marissa's world, accountability could always be redirected if she cried hard enough. A few moments later, my parents arrived too, and the energy inside the room shifted instantly. My father walked in carrying authority the way some men carry expensive cologne. He approached Officer Briggs confidently and extended his hand like they were business associates handling minor confusion. "This is a family misunderstanding," he said smoothly. "My daughters had an argument last night and emotions got involved." I almost laughed out loud hearing that, because there it was again, the family machine working exactly the way it always had. Minimize, redirect, protect the image at all costs. Truth didn't matter nearly as much as appearances. But Officer Briggs wasn't playing along anymore. Leaving children at a public facility with a person who did not agree to supervise them is not a misunderstanding, he said firmly. Silence crashed through the lobby. Beautiful silence. Trevor stopped, smirking. Marissa's fake crying faltered for half a second. My mother looked at me like I had committed betrayal simply by allowing facts to exist publicly. And my father, for the first time in years, looked uncertain. Because authority only works when other people cooperate with the illusion. And suddenly, nobody in that room was cooperating anymore. The silence inside the community center lobby lasted only a few seconds, but it felt long enough for every lie my family ever told about me to start cracking apart in public. My father stood there stiffly beside Officer Briggs with his jaw locked, tight, clearly waiting for somebody to restore control back to him. My mother kept glancing nervously around the room at the employees and officers nearby because people like her cared deeply about appearances. Shame only mattered when witnesses existed. Marissa clutched one hand dramatically against her stomach while Trevor shifted his weight impatiently like the entire situation was somehow wasting his valuable time. I stayed calm. That calmness upset them more than anger ever could. Because my family knew how to fight guilt, tears, and emotional explosions. They had years of experience twisting those into proof that I was too sensitive or overreacting. But calm documentation, calm boundaries, calm refusal, that made them uncomfortable because it removed the chaos they depended on. Officer Briggs asked a few more questions while another officer finished notes nearby. I answered carefully and clearly, making sure every sentence stayed factual. I explained that I had never agreed to babysit. I explained that I had explicitly refused the night before in writing. I explained that this was not the first time my family had assumed responsibility on my behalf without permission. Trevor kept muttering under his breath during the conversation, while Marissa cried quietly into tissues my mother handed her like props in a stage performance. Then Trevor suddenly laughed sarcastically and pointed toward me. "So what now?" he asked loudly. "You're seriously trying to make us look like criminals over babysitting?" That sentence revealed everything. Because even now, after police involvement and abandoned children and forged assumptions, he still believed the real problem was embarrassment. Not the danger, not the irresponsibility, not the fact that 3 children had been left outside a locked building before sunrise. The problem, in Trevor's mind, was that somebody might judge him for it. Officer Briggs looked directly at him. "Sir, nobody forced you to leave children here." Trevor's expression tightened instantly. I wish I could properly explain the feeling that moved through me in that moment. It wasn't happiness exactly, it was validation. Pure, sharp validation after years of being told I was selfish whenever I protected my own peace. For once, somebody outside the family system was looking at the situation clearly. No emotional manipulation, No guilt, no rewriting reality to protect Marissa's feelings, just facts. And facts were finally becoming dangerous for them. I knelt down beside Harper while the adults argued quietly behind us. Up close, I could see dark circles under her eyes that no 9-year-old should already have. She kept glancing nervously between her parents and the officers, trying to understand what was happening without asking directly. Children in dysfunctional families become emotional detectives far too early. They learn to scan rooms for tension because safety depends on predicting adult moods before explosions happen. "Did Mommy say you knew we were coming?" Harper asked softly. That question hurt more than anything else that morning, because the children had been lied to, too. I swallowed carefully before answering. "No, sweetheart. I didn't know." Harper looked down at her shoes quietly, while Miles clung to Chloe's backpack nearby. I could practically see confusion forming inside her little face. Kids always struggle when trusted adults tell completely different versions of reality. Somebody has to be wrong, and children rarely know who to believe. I wanted desperately to protect them from all of it. I wanted to hug them, take them somewhere safe, make pancakes, and pretend adults weren't selfish, complicated disasters. But another voice inside me finally understood something important. Love without boundaries was exactly how my family trapped me for years. They used my love for those children as leverage every single time. And I was finally done confusing guilt with responsibility. About 40 minutes later, Officer Briggs finished the report and informed everyone that the incident would be documented officially. My mother immediately started protesting in that wounded church lady voice she used whenever consequences appeared. "Surely this doesn't need to become a formal matter," she insisted softly. "We're family." There it was again. Family. That word had become their master key for escaping accountability. But Officer Briggs simply nodded toward me. "Ms. Carter made it clear she did not consent to supervise the children. We document situations involving minors carefully." My father's entire face tightened after hearing that. I knew that expression. Well, he wasn't angry because what they did was wrong. He was angry because authority figures weren't automatically siding with him anymore. As everyone prepared to leave, I stood and faced my sister directly for the first time that morning. Marissa's mascara had smudged slightly beneath her eyes, though whether from real tears or frustration, I honestly couldn't tell anymore. "From now on," I said calmly, "every request goes through text. No surprise drop-offs, no assumptions, no volunteering me for responsibilities I never agreed to." Marissa stared at me in disbelief. "You're punishing me for being pregnant." The statement was so ridiculous it almost sounded rehearsed. "No," I answered quietly. "I'm refusing to become another parent without consent." Trevor stepped closer immediately after that, invading my personal space the way insecure men often do when they realize intimidation is all they have left. I could smell stale coffee on his breath mixed with anger. "You think this makes you look strong?" he muttered. "It makes you look bitter." For the first time all morning, I smiled. "Then make sure you spell my name correctly when you complain about me later." The look on his face after that was almost satisfying enough to erase the exhaustion crushing my body. Almost. I left the community center shortly afterward, but emotionally, I never really left that morning behind. The drive home felt surreal. Like my entire understanding of my family had shifted permanently overnight. Deep down, I think some part of me still hoped the shock of police involvement would force them to finally recognize they crossed a line. I thought maybe embarrassment would succeed where years of exhaustion had failed. I thought maybe now they would stop. I was wrong. By the time I reached my apartment, the family group chat had already exploded with messages. My mother wrote paragraphs about loyalty and forgiveness. My father sent short, cold texts demanding I stop escalating things publicly. Trevor posted passive-aggressive comments about people who hate children. And Marissa sent a voice message. I listened to it once while standing in my kitchen. Her voice sounded shaky and dramatic. I can't believe you humiliated me in front of police officers while my children watched. I hope you're proud of yourself. No apology, no accountability, only blame. That was the moment I finally realized something terrifying about my family. They genuinely believed I was the villain because I refused to quietly absorb the consequences of their actions anymore. In their minds, my boundary was more offensive than their behavior. I didn't respond to any of the messages. Instead, I started taking screenshots. Every text, every voicemail, every passive-aggressive comment. I created folders on my laptop while anxiety twisted through my stomach harder with every new piece of evidence. Something inside me no longer trusted this situation to stay emotional. It was becoming strategic now. Calculated. My family wasn't trying to convince me anymore. They were trying to pressure me back into compliance through shame. That afternoon, I called Harper's elementary school mostly because I wanted to make sure nobody else tried using my name again. I expected an awkward 5-minute conversation. Instead, the secretary paused after hearing my name and said something that made my blood run cold. "Oh yes, Ms. Carter," she said politely. "You're listed as primary pickup if the parents are unavailable. Primary pickup, not emergency contact. Primary." I sat frozen at my kitchen table, gripping the phone tighter, while every nerve in my body suddenly screamed danger. "Can you repeat that?" I asked quietly. The secretary sounded confused now. "You're authorized on all school release forms. We contact you first after the parents." I closed my eyes slowly. Then I called Miles's preschool. Same thing. Then Chloe's pediatric clinic. Same thing again. Authorized caregiver, approved pickup, support contact. By the time evening arrived, 3 PDF files sat open on my laptop screen while my stomach twisted harder with every page I read. There was my name listed on official forms, my phone number, my address, statements claiming I agreed to ongoing childcare support during pregnancy and postpartum recovery, and then I saw the signatures. Fake. Every single one. Somebody had tried copying my handwriting, but they got small details wrong. The C in Camille curled differently. The pressure. Patterns looked stiff and hesitant. It looked like somebody tracing a signature from memory instead of naturally writing it. I stared at those forged documents for a long time while rage slowly transformed into clarity. This had never been about occasional babysitting. They were building paperwork, a paper trail, a system. My family had quietly positioned me as a secondary parent without my permission while assuming I would never fight back hard enough to expose them. My supervisor, Denise Holloway, had spent nearly 15 years managing emergency operations inside one of the busiest children's hospitals in the state. She was the kind of woman who stayed calm during tornado warnings, mass casualty drills, power failures, and terrified parents screaming in hallways at 3 a.m. I had seen her de-escalate situations that would make most people collapse emotionally. But when she walked into that lobby and saw Trevor standing there recording on his phone beside 3 exhausted children, even her expression hardened immediately. "What exactly is happening here?" she asked sharply. Trevor switched personalities. So fast it would have been impressive if it wasn't disgusting. His shoulders relaxed, his voice softened, and suddenly he transformed from aggressive bully into wounded family man performing for an audience. "Honestly, this is just a misunderstanding," he said with a fake laugh. "My wife's pregnant, we're overwhelmed, and Camille's being dramatic." Denise looked at me. I looked directly back at her and spoke carefully. "I did not agree to supervise these children. This family has already received legal notice not to leave them with me. There is a police report documenting a previous incident." Everything changed after that sentence. You could actually see it happen. Denise stopped viewing the situation as awkward family conflict and started viewing it as a liability issue involving minors inside a hospital. Her posture straightened instantly. "Mr. Blake," she said firmly, "this is not an authorized childcare facility. You need to remove your children from hospital property immediately." Trevor's fake smile finally cracked. "You're really taking her side?" "No," Denise answered coldly. "I'm taking the hospital's side." That line hit him harder than yelling ever could have, because manipulators survive through emotional confusion. They want debates about intentions and feelings because feelings can be twisted, policies cannot. Trevor lowered his phone slowly while anger darkened his entire face. "My wife is pregnant," he snapped again, like pregnancy itself erased responsibility. Denise didn't blink. "Then your children require proper supervision from their parents." Security officers arrived moments later, and the atmosphere shifted permanently. Harper looked like she wanted to disappear entirely, while Miles clung tightly to Chloe's backpack. I kept catching Harper glancing toward me with confused hurt in her eyes, and every single time it felt like somebody pressing directly against a bruise inside my chest. Because the children didn't understand what was really happening. They just knew adults were angry again. Trevor kept muttering threats while security escorted him toward the exit. "You're humiliating us," he hissed at me quietly while passing. "You're going to regret this." But even then, something about his voice sounded different. Less confident, like some small part of him finally realized consequences were becoming real. After they left, Denise guided me into her office while another administrator completed incident documentation downstairs. My hands shook the entire walk there, though I tried hiding it by gripping my notebook tightly against my chest. The second her office door closed behind us, adrenaline crashed through my body so hard I suddenly felt exhausted enough to cry. Denise handed me a bottle of water silently before sitting across from me. "Start from the beginning," she said. So I did. Everything: the cookout, the community center, the forged signatures, the legal letters, the manipulation stretching back years. I expected embarrassment while explaining it all aloud, but instead, I mostly felt numb, like my brain finally couldn't process the absurdity anymore. When I finished, Denise leaned back slowly in her chair. "Camille," she said carefully, "your family has normalized behavior that would horrify most people." That sentence stayed with me for a long time, because toxic environments distort reality slowly. You adjust piece by piece until impossible. Situations start feeling ordinary. Hearing outsiders react with shock forced me to finally understand how abnormal everything actually was. By evening, the hospital completed a full incident report including security footage, witness statements, and Trevor's recording attempt inside the lobby. Maya sounded almost impressed when I called her afterward. "He did this at your workplace?" she asked. "With cameras," I answered tiredly. She exhaled slowly. "That man gift-wrapped evidence." The second legal notice went out the next morning. This one was far stronger. No direct contact except written communication. No appearances at my workplace or home. No social media claims implying I abandoned children. No use of my identity on caregiver documentation. Maya also included language about harassment, interference with employment, and reputational damage. My mother reacted exactly the way manipulators always react when boundaries become enforceable. Panic. She started calling from blocked numbers repeatedly. My father left a voicemail accusing me of destroying the family over pride. Trevor posted vague, angry quotes online about betrayal and selfishness. And Marissa weaponized public sympathy. 2 days later, she uploaded a tearful social media video showing only swollen eyes, trembling lips, and one hand resting protectively against her pregnant stomach. Her voice cracked while she spoke about family, members abandoning children to prove a point. She never said my name directly, but she didn't need to. Half our church community immediately figured out who she meant. The comments filled instantly. Praying for you. Some women lose their hearts after success. Children always remember who loved them. Family should come first. I sat on my couch reading those comments while rage moved through me like acid. Not messy rage anymore. Focused rage. Because strangers were judging me using a carefully edited lie while the actual evidence sat hidden behind Marissa's performance. Then Trevor uploaded the hospital video. Edited, of course. The clip started after he arrived, conveniently cutting out every moment where I explained I never consented to childcare. The caption read, "This is what happens when people care more about careers than family." Thousands of views appeared within hours, and suddenly, something inside me changed completely. Until then, I had mostly been defending myself privately. Quietly. Legally. Carefully. But my family had chosen a public stage. Fine. I decided I was done whispering truth while they screamed lies. 3 days later, my mother organized a baby sprinkle fundraiser at church. The theme was, "It takes a village." Of course it was. Pastel balloons covered the fellowship hall while soft piano music drifted through speakers near the dessert table. There were framed ultrasound photos, diaper donation bins, little gold decorations shaped like baby footprints, and a giant white sign reading, "Supporting Marissa during this difficult season," as if parenthood had happened to them against their will. I stood near the entrance for almost 5 full minutes unnoticed while church members hugged my mother dramatically and handed envelopes to Trevor near the donation table. My father shook hands beside him, wearing that polished, respectable smile he used whenever protecting family image mattered more than truth. Marissa sat near the front in a decorated chair, looking fragile and exhausted beneath soft lighting designed specifically for sympathy. Then Pastor Grant stepped forward with a microphone. "We gather today," he announced warmly, "to support a growing family experiencing hardship." Several people glanced toward me immediately. They already knew the story, or at least Marissa's version of it. That was the moment I started walking forward. My heels clicked sharply against the fellowship hall floor while conversations slowly died around me one by one. My mother saw me first, and the fear that crossed her face almost made me stop breathing. "Camille," she whispered harshly, "don't do this." I looked directly at her. "I'm not here to ruin anything. I'm here to correct the record." Trevor stepped toward me instantly. "You need to leave." But I looked past him toward Pastor Grant instead. "Pastor," I said calmly, "before people donate money based on false information, I'd appreciate 2 minutes." The room went completely silent. Pastor Grant hesitated because Maya had already emailed church leadership that morning warning them about possible legal concerns regarding public fundraising attached to false claims. He understood the situation was dangerous now. Slowly, reluctantly. He handed me the microphone. My hands should have been shaking. They weren't. Because after years of being silenced, something powerful happens the moment fear finally burns. Away completely, I faced the room quietly. "My name is Camille Carter," I began, "and I love my nieces and nephew very much. Over the last several years, I have paid for groceries, school supplies, birthday parties, summer programs, emergency bills, car repairs, and childcare gaps for this family. What I did not agree to become was an unpaid co-parent." Marissa immediately started crying. Trevor snapped loudly. "She's lying." I raised my phone calmly. "Then let's use documentation." And for the next several minutes, I destroyed the performance piece by piece. I showed the text messages from the cookout. My mother assigning childcare responsibilities without permission. My response refusing clearly. I displayed the community center police report with sensitive information hidden. I showed the forged caregiver forms carrying fake versions of my signature. I showed portions of the hospital incident report documenting Trevor attempting to leave children at my workplace. I never insulted the children. I never screamed. I never called anybody names. I simply let evidence speak. And evidence speaks far louder than emotional manipulation ever can. Murmurs spread across the fellowship hall rapidly. Faces changed, one by one, from sympathy into discomfort. Then suspicion. Then realization. A woman near the back stood slowly. Marissa. You told us Camille abandoned those children. Marissa sobbed harder instantly. She abandoned us emotionally. That sentence actually made several people recoil, because suddenly the truth became visible. This had never been about child safety. It was about entitlement. Then I showed the final slide. 5 years of financial contributions categorized carefully. Groceries, bills, school expenses, camps, medical gaps, emergency childcare, gas money, clothing. The total at the bottom triggered actual gasps across the room. My mother gripped the table edge so tightly her knuckles turned white. My father stared silently at the floor. And Pastor? Grant slowly walked toward the donation box before placing one hand firmly over the top. Until these matters are clarified, he announced carefully, the church will not continue collecting funds today. Trevor exploded immediately. You're seriously believing her over family? Pastor Grant looked directly at him. I believe documentation. That sentence ended everything. Because manipulators can survive accusations. They cannot survive receipts.